All right. Well, thanks for the wonderful introduction. I'll say a few words about me in a minute. Some of you might know me as Steph MC. That's how I go on many social networks. And let's look at where we are in 2025 on privacy. This talk is about ethics. Obviously, it's a lot about ethics, but we will have some code because I'm also a software developer like you, an iOS developer. It's great the timer hasn't started yet, so I guess I have more than 45 minutes now. Very quickly about me, who am I? I'm a French-speaking Spanish guy born in Belgium, living in Germany. So as you can tell, ik hou van Europa. And imparo un po' l'italiano, and I also have a little bit of love for Arabic and Palestine. I have a little bit of a dinosaur in this room. I'm not the oldest dinosaur as a software developer, but that's why in the meantime I put XX years, because otherwise I have to change it every time. Been since day one with iPhone OS, when it was called iPhone OS, and Swift UI, Vision OS. I'm the early adopter, always jumping on a new thing whenever it comes, which sometimes is also hard. As Jeroen mentioned, I've been very politically involved with a very well-known party in Germany, which is also deep to my heart. Also climate, human rights activism, and stuff like that, and vegan. My take on this is always like, there's probably as much vegan in the room as there are Vision OS developers. I'm both. Right. Privacy is a fundamental right. That's the way Apple put it, and I would agree on this. I wrote a book on privacy a couple of years ago, and it started on a talk actually. And that book, just like my book today, will address developers, like we are all, but also users, and we are also all users. And I also want you to think about your users when you watch this talk. We've come a long way since iPhone OS arrived. This thing on the right, besides the French lessons for free, is my original iPhone, which I have here in my pocket. And I can still start it. It still runs. It runs iPhone OS 3.1.3. And back in the days, as you can see, there was one single switch in the general settings, not a privacy menu, that said localization services, yes or no. That's all it is. So now we'll give Steve 3 minutes of my 40 or so. I'm going to sit down with you and watch this video for 3 minutes. This was late 2010. I wanted to think that they spoke about privacy before anyone. It was before GDPR, but it was also after iOS 4.2, which is also running on another device that I have here, which is the iPod Touch. And if you compare both of these, iPhone 3.1.3 and 4.2, you'll see some stuff happen. So let's listen at Steve back in 2010 at D8.
I think we need to wrap this up, but one theme that we want to ask everybody here, and one speaker at great length, is privacy. There seems to be this...
Sorry, Mark.
Sorry, I don't know if Mark's here, but... hey, Mark. So there seems to have been a spate of mistakes or, false starts or things that have to do with privacy where companies have had to retreat, whether it's things with Facebook, things with Google Buzz.
Or Google's Wi-Fi collection recently.
Yeah, that Wi-Fi collection, that inadvertent, yeah. Talk to me about that. How is privacy looked at differently in Silicon Valley than in the rest of America?
No, Silicon Valley's not monolithic. We've always had a very different view of privacy than some of our colleagues in the Valley. We take privacy extremely seriously. As an example, we worry a lot about location in phones. And we worry that some 14-year-old is going to get stalked and something terrible is going to happen because of our phone. And so, as an example, before any app can get location data, we don't make it a rule that they have to put up a panel and ask, because they might not follow that rule. They call our location services and we put up the panel saying, this app wants to use your location data. Is that okay with you? Every time they want to use it. And we do a lot of things like that to ensure that people understand what these apps are doing. That's one of the reasons we have the curated app store. We have rejected a lot of apps that want to take a lot of your personal data and suck it up into the cloud. A lot. So we're really old. A lot of people in the Valley think we're really old-fashioned about this. And maybe we are, but we worry about stuff like this.
But aren't you also going to be moving more into cloud-based things?
Are we going to be moving more into cloud-based things? Sure. But
And doesn't that inevitably
no,
get you? No.
Privacy means people know what they're signing up for in plain English and repeatedly. That's what it means. I'm an optimist. I believe people are smart. And some people want to share more data than other people do. Ask them. Ask them every time. Make them tell you to stop asking them if they get tired of you asking them. Let them know precisely what you're going to do with their data.
Okay.
That's what we think.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't we open up the...
We have a little. We're running a little late, but we certainly have time for some
All
questions.
right, we're not
I
running
think
a little
actually-
late. The video is finished, actually. So this is a video I used to show in bits and pieces, but this time I decided to show it to you in whole because it really fits to the talk. And Apple's privacy pillar, as they refer them, is always four things. Data minimization, which means that you should not collect too much data. Think about it. You don't really have an interest in collecting stuff that you're not gonna ever need, and also it might be a problem for you, and also like, I don't know, lawyers' problems or whatever, but also like it will make you a bigger database or whatever if you grow up to be like the next Facebook or whatever. So that's very important. The second one is on-device processing. The good thing is that Apple is pretty bad at server-side stuff. And CloudKit, anyone? So they are very good at on-device, which is great, but also the things that are on your device should stay on your device, right? If you've done stuff for the web apps, I don't know if you tried, but like local stuff saved on the disk, I know you can do it, and local storage or whatnot, but that's not usually the way it goes, right? Web apps usually go somewhere on some random server, and your data are saved as a user. Not always nice. Transparency and control is the third one. Transparency means tell your users, just like he said, and we'll get back to that, tell your user all the time what you are going to do with the data. Do not hide anything, do not lie to them, otherwise you'll have problems anyway with the review process. Control is give them the opportunity to turn on and off stuff. It will anyway be done by Apple also that they are able to control their stuff. Security protection is the last one of the pillars. It means security from obviously like cryptography or whatever side of the stuff, but also like real social, like I was going to say social security, but that's the wrong term. Like Apple has one thing, for example, which allows if there's a couple and people are getting away from each other, there's a divorce or whatever, it could be that one of the two person was dealing with the software, with the devices, and could be very oppressive to the other person, and Apple gives a mean for that person to get rid of the data on the other device and stuff like that. All right, so let's look again at location services. And this is a video from early 2013 and lovely iOS 6. This is not from me. This is it's not running on any of my phones, but it could be. It's from a YouTube channel, DHTV. And one of the great things about this one is you can see that in iOS 4.2, we already had the location services for each app, but in iOS 5 or 6, I'm not sure, here came the privacy menu. And in a minute, we'll import core location and go into a little bit of code, finally, so to say. But first, let's compare 2013 with 2025, because it's always interesting to see what we've done. On the left is 2013, iOS 6. And by the way, on that video from Apple, it's interesting that Steve mentions a bunch of stuff that only arrived just a few weeks before he speaks with iOS 4.0 or 4.2. Because this menu certainly wasn't there when he spoke about this. So on the left, you can see contacts, calendars, and photos. We'll speak about all three of those, and location services, obviously, as well. And on the right, you can see how it is nowadays. You have to scroll 1, 2, 3, 4, and you have way more stuff. So we'll concentrate, again, on the stuff that have been there forever because they've changed a lot. But back in the days, you even had Twitter and Facebook. Is this a notification from my Mac? It could be. Well, no. Whatever. Anyway, let's go. Let's go to the manager. Let me introduce you to the manager. And she has a phone on which I'm going to develop a very simple app in which I want to show you a number, which is the raw value of an enum that I will introduce you in a minute. But when you go to your manager, dear manager, it's time to code. So let's go on Xcode and let's start coding a little bit. Let's write the manager. Some call it a view model, a controller, whatever. I'm going to call this class, it's an observable class, and it has one single property, which is the authorization status. And then I'm going to have a simple SwiftUI view, and all I want to do is show something, show the row value, and right now, obviously, nothing to see here because I haven't updated it. And so this is an opportunity to concentrate on the CL authorization status, with many of you might know, but it's interesting to look at it again because not determined in 2025 means I could be in this mode when I share, because it's like a single sharing mode. I could be in restricted, which has been there forever. It's for MDMs, parental control, stuff like that. If you are in restricted mode, you will not be able to do anything. It's not your decision. You could be in denied if you've asked the user already and you are in this never, they said never, and as a reminder, there is no way, luckily, to ask again. And the interesting thing is, before iOS 8, we had only authorized, which means we didn't have always, which is now what it refers to, or when in use. It's also because we didn't have a lot of multiple apps running at the same time, so it was mostly the app in the front. So if we go back to this menu that I was mentioning, luckily in iPhone OS 4.2, we had every single app asking to be able with a switch on and off, but nowadays we have a little bit more than that. What we have is each app has something like a never, ask next time. I'm going to have to check this because this is annoying, and I know what happened here. Oh, thank you for writing me, Jeroen. It's nice that you write me. I'm not even joking. It's literally Jeroen writing. How do you turn this off? Yeah, stop writing, please. It's interesting. I didn't know you have even though iMessage is off, I didn't know I get the notification. Focus is the one I was looking. Do not disturb. Please do not disturb. I'm giving a talk. Thank you, Jeroen, for trying this out, hacking into my system. And then there is while using the app, which we'll get in a minute. All right, let's go back to our location manager and implement the delegate. Every time I do this, it sounds very old school to me because in the meantime, I have to do it less and less, but still, you have to do it sometime. And let's initialize my CL location manager and get an authorization status, and then I will have not determined, which is, I don't know yet because I haven't asked yet, right? Nothing new to many of you, but now the interesting part of it is when you have this new thing since a couple of years called ask next time or when I share, if I literally have only this, but also have this location button, which is the thing you should use since iOS 15 if you only need once the location of the user. Please stop using request authorization or whatever if you know the only thing you need is per session or whatever. So once you do that, you have a nice button that I'll show you in a moment, and you can also start updating the location in your manager. And at the end of the day, I have an app which is similar to that. The first time I click on this current location button, which has a couple of ways to change the label, but it's fairly fixed, and you get this prompt. And by the way, I don't know if you can tell this, but the size of the button didn't change. So maybe that's a bug. I have to report to Apple because the other size of my feed changed. And so the gist of what I'm trying to do is display basically a timestamp and a latitude and longitude. And by the way, the location status change from 0 to 4, which is when in use. And so I'm obviously missing something in Location Manager, which I want to have the locations, just a random, like an array of the current location. So if I move around with the device, I will see the location change. And I have a basic Swift UI. The main reason I wanted to show you the Swift UI is I don't know about you, but I've been writing for iOS forever, and I keep on using the same thing and forget that new things arrive. One of the things that I discovered, or that I was reminded at, is that there is a formatted, which arrived actually in iOS 15, and so which allows you to not to have to roll your own text formatter, or date formatter in this case. I'm sure there is at least one person in this room who goes like, oh, I didn't know this existed, because I've been doing my own formatter since iOS 6 or whatever. So let's save a little bit of battery and the world at the same time. Let's get only one location, even though I'm showing 2 in the emoji, which I just realized now. So if you start, that's right, but also don't forget to stop, which is why we have Michael. Don't forget to stop when you get enough. It's not till you get enough. And I gave a talk at like a while ago about energy optimization. It's on my speaker deck. You might want to have a look at this. I would love to give this a new version of this talk as well, because there are new tools from Apple also about energy. Also, there is something interesting called Energy Kit and stuff like that. But the gist of the matter is don't forget to stop. And the best thing to do is actually to use request location and instead of start location, because then you will get only one location and one delegate callback. And for that, what you'll have to do is you'll have to just call request location instead of start updating location. Then you get only one callback. Now, onto another topic. The location accuracy, saving the battery again and the planet at the same time a little bit. The location services does its best to achieve the requested accuracy. It's what the documentation tells us. However, the apps must be prepared to have less accurate data. So these are the 6, I cannot count how many engineers they take, enum cases that we have since iOS 4. And I always recommend people to go for 3 kilometers if they can. You potentially, for your app, if it's like a weather app, you don't need best or nearest 10 meters or whatever. I don't think the weather at your neighbor will be very different than your weather. And if it is, let me know. There's something wrong going on in your neighborhood. And this is your decision as a developer. This is the important thing about this slide. This is your decision as a developer. When I wrote the book, I made a wish. Always make wishes when you write books, because maybe Apple will bring those wishes to reality. In this case, it was the case because I was mentioning that there is no way for the user to select this accuracy, nor a way to tell when an app requires it. And I was thinking like, would be probably a terrible UI and a few more edge cases for developers. And this little 4 that you see there was a feedback that I filed. And I guess I was not the only one to file this. Like many other people were like, this is weird. As a developer, I can decide the accuracy, but the user has no idea. Just like the same as back in the days and with the iPhone OS 2 and 3 SDK, we could just get the location from the user without even the user knowing. The book had fresh code back in the days on iOS 13, and so in iOS 14 came the location accuracy reduced case, which is turned on by in the UI with this this little thing on the top left which says precise on and off. So if you lower the accuracy, you have more privacy, but you also have more battery. And by the way, if the user decides this precise on, this is the accuracy that you will get. It doesn't matter what you request as a developer. In my test, this is 6 kilometers that I test this. And I don't know if you remember the UI, but when I was showing the locations, I was also showing the accuracy sometimes. And if you are very precise, it's 5 meters. Otherwise, it could be 6 kilometers. All right. So it turns in different APIs also, which is new since iOS 14. And one of the reasons I mentioned new things since iOS 14 is that many of us in the room here won't be able to have their app running in iOS 18 or 17, maybe 16, but 14, come on. anybody in the room should have their app running in iOS 15 at least. That's my hope. Is there anyone in the room which still have to support iOS 13? 12. Okay, I need to speak to whatever your company is. Anyway, authorized for precise location is this thing that reveals what you previously had, and then you will have the full accuracy or reduced accuracy. Apple also calls it precise location and approximate location as well. And when the user has chosen to grant this application access to location information, says the documentation with reduced accuracy, region monitoring, and beacon ranging are not available to the application. This is something that you have to know. Also, the horizontal accuracy would be about 5 kilometers. I told you in my test it's more like 6 sometimes. And the last one is important. Application will receive location up to 20 minutes old. So this is something you have to know. It depends on your use case. It could be tricky. But again, if you are my very good example of a weather app, I think the weather won't change too much in 20 minutes. Maybe in Amsterdam. Yeah. All right, here's a modern version of the manager for those who have the privilege of being able to program in iOS 17, because the location button is an API from iOS 15, but the thing on the CL location live update, which is returning an async sequence, is something in iOS 17, and this is really, really sweet, because no delegates, no request whatsoever. This piece of code will give me an async sequence, and then obviously it's your job to get out of this async sequence at one time by any means of having a Boolean somewhere. What I'm also told by Apple is that, or by their documentation and dub talks, is that they care themselves about starting and stopping the location request internally when you're stale, when you're not moving. So you are writing to the to work, and so you're getting locations. You are working for like 8 hours, and then it stops and we restart again when you leave this place or this region, or I don't know if there's some kind of region monitoring inside of this thing internally. But that's nice, because at the end of the day, this is what happens. On the very left, you can see that there is a prompt asking me the location update, which is my sample app, will access my location, and you can tell that because I turned it off, the precise, you can tell where I live in the city of Düren, but you cannot tell exactly where I live. And then the interesting part of it is, after that, I only have never and when I share. You don't even see a when in use over there, and the reason is I didn't even have to ask the request location. And on the right is my sample app, and the stop sharing my location button is a button I created myself. There is, interestingly enough, no stop sharing my location like system button or whatever. Also, you can always explicitly request it, but only if you can't avoid it. If you can avoid it, just remember, avoid it, but if you cannot, you can request it. And you will, by any means, always have allow once. This is a new thing also, which also arrived in iOS 13. Since iOS 13, and by the way, when I'm mentioning it arrived in iOS 13, I don't mean it arrived in the iOS 13 SDK or whatever. It means when your app is running under iOS 13. Same thing with something I'll show you later. When your app is running in iOS 18 and you assume that your user will only see this UI, well, Apple gets in the way, which is great. So in iOS 13, they introduced this allow once. And this is what happened when I go request when in use authorization, for example. And it will also be displayed first if you ask request always authorization. So there is no way to request always authorization directly. I think back in the days there was a way, but then after a while they removed it. And in iOS 14 they changed the way around. I don't know if you can tell that, but look closely at where the allow once button is in 13 and where it is now in 14. It's on the top. So it's like the button order swapped in iOS 14. If you don't see the prompt, but you get this very interesting message in your console in Xcode saying, error domains KCL error code 1 null. Super useful. it probably means that you've forgotten something like one of those strings in your plist, and as location when in use, description, and always or any of the two. And if you use if you put both, you can put both, but it doesn't make a lot of sense, but only the last one, like the always and when in use, will be used. And allow once, again, will turn you in this authorized when in use, like in this case, which had the row value of 4, but only for one session, and whatever a session is, so to say. Also, the when in use weird thing string is just my lame demo string that I wrote. Please write decent strings. Strings are not always shown in their full length, depending on the size of the device, which is very weird. In my different tests, I found out on some iPhone SE, they don't show the string if the string is too long. But I also have the feeling a lot of time that Apple is not really testing on those older phones sometimes. That's kind of the feeling that I have. All right, let's go into always if you really want to drain the user's battery. This will appear after with permission to ask to change to always allow or keep only while using. There is no never anymore there. The user will have to do it by themselves, which is kind of fair enough for the developers. But this will only happen after the original one. Avoid it if you can. It's draining the battery. Also, the user will get a prompt after a while. This is one of the apps that I use. German language courses for free as well, just like French at the beginning. This is an app that I use, and after a while, this app will, or the system will prompt me, hey, this app has been using your location for a while. Do you want to go back to when in use? And as a privacy-concerned developer, I'm probably a user. I'm probably the nightmare of every developer, because obviously I will say change to only while using. And so you might think as an app, depending on how you programmed it, if you don't check your cases or whatever, so always check the cases. Do not do a weird thing like, saving in the user defaults or whatever the status you are, because things will happen. Users will change the settings. Another way you can save the battery and the world as well, and it's also privacy related, but some of this talk is also like battery related, is instead of checking the location continuously, you can just use region monitoring. It will need always if it's running in the background. So if you have when in use, this region monitoring will always only work when the app is in the foreground. And also you might want to check CL monitor, which is a new thing since iOS 17, which is pretty nice. Check it out. I'm not going too much into the detail, but there is a nice simple app. Remember, this won't work with approximate location. So if the user actually gave you approximate location, this is not your decision. This thing won't work. But wait, the good thing is you can request it at once. There is this thing called request temporary full authorization, which Maps itself, for example, does, which tell you, hey, you want to have a turn-by-turn direction, but I only have approximate direction. It's very hard, if you tell me to approximately drive you to the Do iOS conference, I might drive you in the water. So this thing has been there since iOS 14. Ta-da! So again, one of those things where you don't specifically know because you haven't looked at the API since forever, and those APIs from co-location has changed a lot. All right, that's it for co-location, but a slide in between to remember you to upgrade your code and your users. That's my recommendation. I know it's harsh, and I know it doesn't work every time, and especially when I hear iOS 12. But the gist of it is try, if you can, to move your users to the current, not the beta, version every year of WWDC. And to give you an example, it means if you have the privilege of now having your app supporting iOS 18, it would be wonderful in terms of cleaning the code, getting more privacy, and stuff like that. Before we give Tim 12 seconds, I think it's fair we gave Steve 3 minutes. So let's give Tim 12 seconds. The other reason that I would like you to support your app like in iOS 18 is you don't have to go to 26 right now because of all the UI changes. So because this is I've heard a lot of nightmares from developers. If you have to support 18 and 26 right now, it's going to be very harsh. So it's okay for me if you hold on for another year for making a liquid glass version of your app, because by then you can maybe tell my app is only 26 and 27, because we've seen this change coming from iOS 6 to 7, and the change that came from 18 to 26 is a very hard one. Also, as far as I know, there is not any huge, big new thing in privacy in iOS 26. 26 is mostly glass. All right, let's go and hear what Tim has to say to us.
If we monetized our customer, if our customer was our product, we could make a ton of money. We've elected not to do that.
If you can, try to not have the customer be your product, but find another way, like not using their data to just plainly make money, like some other random company which starts with an M and ends with an A. In the meantime, in the middle there is ET. Phone home. All right, let's go to photos and import the other thing that I wanted to speak to you about, which is the Photos API. And this is another kind of sample app that I wrote, or it's still kind of the same one that I called A+ Privacy, and it shows you that since a while there is this limited access to the photo library. And so on the right you see how it will look like. So let's go back to the authorization status. It's very similar to collocation. We have not determined, restricted, denied, and authorized, because we always use it just in front, not in the back. But since iOS 14 we have limited, which is also great. It also means that if you are building your app on the premise that giving an authorization from the users to have access to all of their photos means since iOS 14, it depends on the user.
Boom, boom, and boom. Boom, 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 boom.
I only wanted to give you a few boom, boom, booms from Steve. There's a wonderful video on YouTube. It's like 5 minutes long. There are 341 booms from Steve. So, because boom, 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 boom was Steve's thing. My thing is more like flip, flip, flip. So, anyway, the boom, boom, boom will happen if you forget your description library. I like that it booms way better than collocation, which just randomly puts you an error in Xcode, because it reminds you, oh, I forgot something. And this is my reminder to you that you have to use descriptive string, explain your user, like Steve was saying, in plain English, what they are going to do. So let's look at Photos UI now, because I didn't get into the detail of Photos. It's like request authorization and same thing, very similar to, it also has like delegates and whatnot. But Photos UI has a way to pick one or multiple on demand. And there's something new on Swift UI, which is the photo picker. And this one is integrated here, and it will tell to the user that this part at the bottom is actually not part of your app. It's part of the outside. It's an outside process. It uses transferable, so I'm not going to give you a lot of code here, but it has many configuration options, like you can hide the accessories, hides the Chrome, and you can also hide, like disable some stuff like the search, the staging area, collection navigation. So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of ways to configure. I don't know if you can tell, but if you look at where it says photos on the screenshot, it actually turns between the photo and the privacy icon. That's kind of a reminder to the user. I think this is pretty nicely done from Apple, that this part is not your app, actually. And as Tim mentions, consider your users as jewels.
And HomePods and the watch, et cetera, and if we can convince you to buy one, we'll make a little bit of money. Right? But you are not our product. Right. You are our customer. You are a jewel, and we care. We care about the user experience, and we're not going to traffic in your personal life. I think it's an invasion of privacy.
And if you think this is a little bit too much Tim kind of drink the Kool-Aid kind of Apple thing, I have something that makes it even better at the end of the talk. But now let's look at Contact UI as almost the last one. This one is deep to my heart because I've been using it forever. And a little bit example again, manager is back, and I have a contact store, and I have the authorization status very similar to what I did until now. And I have the authorization status, also same thing, similar. If you wonder why this thing only arrived in iOS 9, and you wonder what happened before we had the address book API, which was a C API. Yeah. If it reminds you nightmares, it's okay. I've been teaching iOS since forever. I don't know, since like 15 years, always like a week. And I remember back in the days having to tell people how to do this in Objective-C. It was okay because Objective-C and C get along very well. But when Swift arrived around the corner of iOS 8, having to deal with Swift, with C in Swift was a nightmare. It's not anymore, luckily, but it was a nightmare. You had to go over a bridging header in Objective-C. I even got to do some Objective-C++ at one time in my career, which was interesting. And the important thing here is the bottom one. In iOS 18, we finally get the same thing of the limited access. And it was, for me, it was like a revelation. It was like, finally, as a user, you get to decide what kind of access I do have. So let me show you an example of a sample app. Sometimes I take this reference to the good, the bad, and the ugly. Which I find interesting because knowing who the good guy is supposed to be, not very good to me, but anyway. The descriptors on the right is a list of properties that you can have access to if you are just getting all the information about your users, like all the details. It's pretty bad, right? It's better, it's like a little bit good, if you only get like only a few properties. But the problem is, as a user, I have no clue about your descriptors or your keys to fetch. It's if you're a nice developer, you might put up a UI asking me what kind of property am I allowed to get from you, but might be also cumbersome from a UX perspective. So this is the next thing that I would request to Apple is like, please give the user the opportunity to say, I don't want the developer to have access to my, I don't know, like my birth date or whatever. Maybe there is something that I missed, but I don't think so. Let's go with an example of searchable, which obviously is SwiftUI in iOS 17. It's a very simple example where I have a search thing in my manager, and I just search nothing at the beginning, and then I search the search key or whatever. And my search code is I get an access to the contacts, and then I have a predicate, which is if I have no search, it's like everything, and otherwise I will match the number, and this is where my magic trick happens. This is the magic name where you have to look, and that's it. And on the bottom, instead of an as predicate true, you could have used the same thing, this very long thing called predicate for contact and container, and so on and so forth. So
ugly.
Yeah, in case you didn't get this one.
Ugly.
It's pretty ugly, right? At least pre-iOS 18. Besides the fact that the code might not be the best one because it's a demo app, but since iOS 18, the users might put you in the limited option anyway. So if you take all the fields from all the people, it's pretty ugly, like I mentioned. So it's worse than bad, actually. And also, this is the way it looked before.
Ugly.
So it was to, by the way, this is a video of Steve introducing the original iMac in 1998 and saying that most of the PCs look ugly. And he goes on further and says the back of our iMac looks better than the front of the PCs. Which was true, actually. It's not very hard, though. All right, so this is what happens now if you ask something like that. You won't have directly access. So if you remember this button that I had here, all the contacts, yes or no, allow or not. This is now a continue button. And on the next slide, you go to select the contacts and share. You can decide to share all the contacts, just like back in the day. Or you can go and decide this very interesting part, which is select contacts later. If I do this and do not select any contacts, I basically give access to none of my contacts to your app, but your app thinks that that it has access to all of my contacts. So I can see some interesting UI here happening. Like, anybody forgot that this list might be empty? Also, the better thing is there is this proactive or autofill keyboard. Like it's autofill everywhere. So if you have a text field, works obviously also for UI text fields. but do not ask me to speak too much about UIKit. I'm trying to forget it since a few years. And you can just put a text content type, and there's a bunch of, I just put credit card, telephone number, full street address, address city, but there is like 20 or 30 of those. And it's nice because it allows the user to basically select only a portion of data. Only works obviously in a text field or a text editor, UI text field, UI text view, and not programmatically. When you have Swift UI and limited access, you can also use the contact access button, and there is also, which is similar to the location button, and also there is a contact as a speaker modifier on Swift UI. It works a bit wonky in my test, but this is the way it's supposed to work. You have this quick add at the bottom, and once you ask, you have allow limited access, and again, in this case, you won't have to ask for explicit permission this way. And that's kind of the way it works. Like I have a contact access button at the top, and then I have a list of contacts, a searchable, and a toolbar that allows to add something on the like more contacts to my selection, so to say. And then when I fetch my descriptors. I have a predicate for the IDs, and then I can enumerate contacts, which is only access to those IDs that the user actually gave me. So that is actually pretty sweet. All right, more limited goes without Swift UI. This is why there is the sad emoji there. Those APIs are very old. They've been the same forever, CN Contact Picker View Controller. If somebody can tell the difference between those two, who can spot the difference between those two? At the bottom, there's an S. There is contact and contacts. It's very subtle, I know. The reason why I had this very weird code of using a tag or whatever other techniques that you have is because I don't get it exactly anymore, but I think if you implement the contacts delegate, then the contact delegate is not called. Anyways, it's single or multiple selection. Same thing with the calendar. This is the only slide I will have about calendar. Because same thing, you can use EventKit UI. It's everything in UIKit. So if you do it in Swift UI, you're going to have to wrap it in a representable. Now,
boom, boom, and boom, 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 boom.
Another boom, boom, boom is always welcomed. This app will crash again, the interesting part of here is that I'm showing you a prompt which doesn't have any of my string because the phone was too small or something like that. So you write your string, but it might not be displayed depending on, but write it anyways. And the last bit of Tim, we need a little bit of America.
It's a civil liberty and something that is unique to America. You know, this is like freedom of speech and freedom of the press, and privacy is right up there for us. And so we've always done this. This is not something that we just started last week when we saw something happening. We've been doing this for years.
Yeah. We've been doing it for years. Sorry, Tim, but no. Privacy ain't no America thing, buddy. If it wasn't for GDPR, and obviously Apple itself making it, this wouldn't happen anyways. All right, so that's it for me.